Welcome to Colney Talk Podcast.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Colney Talk Podcast, the byte-size show. I'm your host Alex. First-time listeners, glad to have you here. And to my returning guests, thank you for sticking with me. As always, I talk a bit about the Arsenal match and pick out my top 3 Arsenal players who shined and one player, unfortunately, who didn't meet the mark that I get to call out. What a game this was. What a game. Arsenal showed their steel today in a gritty 1-0 win against our noisy neighbors. Honestly, Spurs couldn't overpower Arsenal's determination no matter how hard they tried. There's just levels to this game, and Spurs, as we know it, just don't quite get it, or even will get it. Let's start with the lineup. We expected a couple of changes that were forced given this dreadful international break. Jorginho stepping in for Rice and captaining the squad, which it's great, and we know the influence he brings to the team. Trossard playing up top, linking with our other 3 attackers, and Jesus on the bench. So that's some, refreshing news to see from the squad as they gain back the health and strength in depth as well. Arteta opting for a more controlled midfield, which he had no other choice. In fact, the necessary choice. We had a lot of adjustments in the squad and a lot to deal with in this game. The stage was set for a classic North London derby, and the boys brought it. They brought it. Okay, so let's break it down. Arsenal came out with an excellent defensive shape, immediately giving Tottenham no breathing space. It was clear from the first whistle that the boys knew how to manage Spurs' attempt to break us down. And let's talk about David Raya. This man is out. He was outstanding today. In the first 5 minutes, Spurs came out with intensity, trying to test our defense, playing behind the crowd. They had to do something. They were ready to show for it. But Raya, man, absolutely brilliant. A save in the 5th minute, setting the tone for his entire performance. Then he followed it up with another great save after a dangerous cross into the box. Spurs were relentless in attack, encouraging them to press on, but they couldn't find a way. But credit where it's due, Arsenal weren't just defending for their lives. Kai Havertz, who had a quieter game than usual, obviously there are changes and affects the flow of the game. He managed to get his head on a cross, forcing a decent save from the keeper. It was a sign that we were growing into the game as well. Martinelli, with his relentless runs from deep, kept Spurs defense on high alert. He had a good one. He had one good chance with an open run from behind, but it wasn't quite convincing. Still, you could feel the momentum shifting ever so slightly in our favor, but it kept going back and forth. But ultimately, we knew that there was a lot for us to absorb in terms of pressure from Spurs. But of course, we had the shaky moments, a scary one in particular when Ben White misjudged a pass, gifting Spurs a golden chance to just finish us off. But luckily, our defensive titan, Big Saliba, was quick to react, covering for Ben White and closing down the space before Spurs could take the advantage, and that was amazing. As the half went on, Arsenal started to slow the tempo, taking a little bit of that steam off and the sting from what Spurs were trying to do with the pressure that they had on top of us. This was where Jorginho came in. Now, he wasn't the most aggressive or influential going forward, but he played with maturity, keeping things calm, combining with Partey when we tried to build out and get the ball out of our defensive third, and made sure that the team didn't lose their shape. His experience was invaluable during this phase of the game. We kept on dealing with this pressure for most portions of the game, as we expect. Yes, Spurs had a few bright moments, but once again, they simply couldn't race to the second ball quickly enough. They were chasing shadows while Gunners showed maturity and discipline in how to just deal with situations in very tough environments. And as I called his name, Raya, he kept us alive during those moments where mistakes threatened to cost us, the misplays, the almost giveaways. It was a tense half for sure. Arsenal's defensive organization deserves a lot of credit, and in fact, it was the defensive posture that rewarded us with this win. We played in a compact, disciplined shape, never allowing Spurs to find space between the lines. Sure, there were moments of tension, but we recovered well. The margins were slim, really slim. One or two giveaways could have easily resulted in a goal for Spurs, but as the clock ticked on, Arsenal proved that they had the mental toughness to see the game out. And that's how the story went for the first half. Second half was more of the same in terms of pressure, but if anything, Spurs came out with even more aggressive stands and pressure. They were breaking our lines, trying to pass their way into the box, but Arsenal held firm. The Arsenal squad were possessed to play defensive football, focused and disciplined in the face of constant waves of Spurs attack. It felt like the most you can imagine Arsenal preparing for this game was just defensive play all through. And that is a credit to the team preparing for this game, knowing what they were coming up with, and it didn't feel like they were surprised by it. So that really encouraging. We had a few moments where Spurs were exposed, and we, exposed them, giving us perfect motion in a counter-attack to score, but we were lacking in execution. Not effort, execution. Martinelli surprised me in his defensive performance. Boy, one of his best games I can remember in a while. In fact, in attack, he had the chance to elevate his brilliance, but it wasn't there as I always hoped it would. We all hope for more from him because he has that sign. He has it. He has that beast within him. But the defensive play simply was a wow factor from him today, and he deserves that mention. Arsenal had their shield up, defending and clearing out crosses coming into our box. We made it very difficult, yet measured, when we transitioned forward. The match then hit a crescendo, a couple of bright moments from Arsenal as we managed to break out of Spurs press. And then the moment of pure joy. Big Gabby, the man, the towering man, the big beast behind the Arsenal lines. This man, the header that sent us all in absolute ecstasy. It was a towering effort, completely out-muscling his mark and burying the ball in the back of the net. Amazing scenes. Spurs, for all their pressing, couldn't cope with Arsenal's grit, and Big Gabby's share to score was fully rewarding. I mean, that was brilliant. It was amazing. And from that point on, it was a game of deep defensive survival. Spurs threw everything at us. Everything. I mean, line-breaking passes, crosses after crosses into the box. But Raya, yet again, was superb. Save after save. He, like the rest of the team, played brilliant defensive football with a sweet victory and a clean sheet. I mean, couldn't get any better doing that in the toilet. I mean, in White Hart Lane. Now, onto the top three performers. First up, David Raya, wall between the sticks. Outstanding from start to finish. Raya was the reason Spurs couldn't get a foothold in the game. Early saves kept us in it, and he was always in control of his area. His reflexes were sharp, but it was his calmness under pressure that stood out. There were moments when Spurs could have scored, but Raya's positioning and decision-making were top-notch. As the game got more intense, Raya was as instinctive as ever on all crosses in the air and second shot attempts. Amazing from that guy. Second player, Big Gabby. He was an absolute rock at the back today. From the first whistle, he was involved in defensive action. This was games that he relished, blocking shots, making tackles, and sweeping balls coming in through our box from crosses and winning aerial duels. Spurs couldn't break us down. Simply couldn't. Every time they got close, Big Gabby was there to snuff out the danger. And let's not forget his game-winning moment, towering header that gave us the lead and ultimately the win. He represented the back line brilliantly today, and I'll quickly give a shout-out to Saliba as well. He did his thing. He was not going to be left out, getting the influence of a defensive play and not showing out, which he did. So, kudos to him. Third and final player, Martinelli. Relentless energy. He was in running form today, and not just for attack, but to defend. Can you imagine giving props to Martinelli because of his defensive plays in the game? I mean, it was clearly a standout defensive performance from him. He stretched Spurs back line. Sure, Not all his runs were perfect, but his sheer energy and will to make something happen there were key. Defensively, he tracked back and helped out. He's done it before. Nothing new there, but his defensive display in this game was quite different. It was telling of how much he was committed to doing that, and he just showed the other side of his hard work. And let's not forget, his pressure led to some of those crucial turnovers that led us to counter and opening them up from the backside. So, Martinelli has, he's shown something, and I know there's a lot to him we have waited for, but at least he deserves the credit and the big mention. He has a beast inside him, and I'm hoping he tears it up through sooner when it comes to attack, because those runs, those relentless energy, that ferocious passion in when he's on the ball and what he does on the field has to pair with an attacking menace that he displays in several moments, but it's just the inconsistency. But this is about Martinelli, the player today that deserves the mention of the third top performer for Arsenal in this game, and boy, big applause for him. So, I didn't have any candidate for an odd player today, although Jorginho filling in for Rice. Let's be clear, he didn't have his best game, but his influence wasn't about getting on the ball much. What Jorginho did was bring calmness to the defense, organizing the midfield, especially in helping us soak up Spurs' pressure. He played with maturity, directing players and keeping on with the structure intact. And when things got tough, we were able to manage that in ways that they were communicating and dealing with that. He was the prime target to dispossess his ball control, sure, but his intelligence in the field was just great. There's no stats to show it, but it was massive. So, that's just the only thing I'll call out. Arsenal's 1-0 win against Spurs was all about toughness. It was about heart and a bit of steel in the blood. Spurs threw everything they had at us, but could not break our defense. As always, Tottenham found a way to remind us why they're, Spursy. And all that pressing, all that pressure, and what did they have to show for it? Nothing. No goals, no points, just frustration. And they couldn't overpower Arsenal's determination, plain and simple. This was a game that required maturity, discipline, and a bit of luck, and Arsenal delivered. We've shown once again that this team is capable of grinding out results when we need it, which we did today, and they deserve all the 3 points. We raced to the second ball, played with purpose, and held our nerves. What more could you want from a true North London team? Red. That's it. Red. Well, that's it for today's episode of Colney Talk Podcast. Arsenal's win is just an amazing stamp in what we've always known, and it's a good sign of things to come when we go to that stadium over there. And London is forever going to be red. Just tell your neighbors. Thanks for listening. Talk to you all real soon. As always, come on, you guys.